Hazel. Welcome to my lemonade stand. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you. I am thank you for having me. I'm excited for the conversation. We normally have such good conversations off of any platform, so looking forward to this.
Yes, me as well. So, to kick things off, I want to introduce you to everybody. So, this is
Okay.
Hazel Lord. Hazel is an engineer. She's also an MBA from the Rotman School of Management, which is how we got connected because we're both alumni from the same school. So, Hazel in 2014 started her own consulting practice, Pearl Operational Design, or POD. Where she brings more than 20 years of success in helping organizations achieve operational excellence with design principles rooted in respect, discipline, commitment, and continuous search for perfection. Hazel is recognized as an industry leader. In 2023, she was awarded the Black Entrepreneur of the Year. As a perpetual learner, Hazel seeks out opportunities to learn and apply different approaches to problem solving within organizations. She is always excited to bring people on this educational journey with her. And as she mentioned already, we always have great conversations. And I was very excited to interview her and share some of that conversation with the folks on my lemonade stand. So welcome again.
Okay.
So why don't I just jump right into things? So I'm going to start off with the first question that I had for you, which is I wanted to understand how does your approach to operational design help organizations improve the way they deliver value to their customers?
Okay. So first things first, I know that so operational design is something that's very, very passionate. And I always tell people I'm an engineer first. And so I studied chemical engineering, and I'll call it at Queen's University. And as an engineer, you look at systems and you design, whether it's in the form of a manufacturing plant, and you're looking to understand systems. I was lucky enough when I finished to actually work in a manufacturing facility, two actually, where you can see, and that's the difference sometimes with organizations and something as tangible as a manufacturing facility. The main end-to-end process, so to speak, you can see it. It's visible, it's transparent. There are aspects that may be opaque, but you can see it. And my belief is if you want to solve a problem, you first need to be able to see it. It has to be transparent. And so for me, that system design, that chemical engineering thinking is something that I now translate into organizations because organizations are systems. Organizations are complex. They have elements, they have processes, they're solving problems, they have goals, overall goals as well as individual goals. And so, really, what we want to do when we work with organizations is using operational design and principles to provide the clarity. So we call it operational clarity that will help them really uncover, these hidden inefficiencies. And what do those inefficiencies do? We know they're a time suck. They deplete your dollars, your costs, and they actually can impede your momentum. And so that's really why, taking that lens and operational design is so important to organizations. Such that every time I see someone and I say, well, this is the work we do, they can tell me at a minimum three organizations that need to look at that. So this is really, really what's important.
Great. And that's really interesting as well when you talk about the fact that, because in every organization, so for example, banking has been an industry I've worked in
All right.
for most of my career, you can't always see that process, right? So just the value of you actually being able to see, like whether, on a manufacturing plant and being able to really always have that lens, even when you're working in industries like healthcare and so forth,
Right.
where it's not so transparent to the naked
Mm-hmm.
eye in terms of
Mm-hmm.
how it's there, but you know that it is there. You might not be able to see it. And then being able to break that down, because I'm sure sometimes the folks that you're dealing with as well, they don't necessarily see it in that way until you point it out to them. Like you said, the process clarity.
Yes. And many times I think I'm trying to think of opportunities where it was we need to fix this and that we go in and that's exactly what you need to fix. It's always been, okay, we want to do this. We come in and then you start to uncover things because that's what we're doing, right? We're providing that operational clarity. We're kind of like making it open. And one of the reasons why we're actually called operational design is that what I found, and this is throughout my career before starting my business, is that people don't always sit, like how you do with a house. You get your plans, the architect comes and you figure out what rooms and you plan and you design. I'm not sure if that rigor goes into organizations when they're starting. I think many of them kind of cobble together. And so then when you start to do something that's significant or something significant happens to the organization, then it's right. It's about, well, we may need to have that clarity first before we implement AI across our enterprise, before we implement a huge another technology, before we determine that we want to merge and do an operational merger. So definitely being able to see
Yes,
is very important.
because then that's when the hidden things pop up
It's
that
when
you
the hidden
didn't.
things come up. That's when they pop up.
Right,
And
right.
sometimes those hidden things need to be solved first before what you're trying to accomplish.
Right,
Mhm.
because it could impede your ability to achieve the goals that you went in for, whether it's
100%.
a merger or what have you. Yes.
100%. Yeah.
So one thing that we've talked about before that I've always found fascinating is that you do have you have an engineering degree, so you have that left brain rigor. So I always think of engineers as being left brain, and for those folks who don't necessarily think in that way, left brain, our left sphere of our brain has always been associated with the logic,
Mhm.
like models, math, linear things, and then the right side of the brain is the more abstract, big picture images as opposed to
Mhm.
necessarily those kind of logical, like, mathematical models. So, what I find so fascinating is the fact that although you come from that discipline, you intentionally sought to explore the right side of your brain from a perspective of art
Mhm.
when you went into this, when you started your organization, and as you grow as a leader of your organization. And I wanted you to just share a little bit about why it was that you thought that that was an important thing to complement your experience and how that really presents itself in terms of benefits for your clients and benefits for the growth of your organization.
Mhm. So your organization, as I said, organization, and they're so exciting. They're systems, and they're not they are not linear. There's no clear logic when you're trying to uncover and look for that clarity. But it started with a mentor, and let me call it the facts because people always talk about mentorship and the formal mentorship. And whenever I talk, I always talk about the informal. Those people that may spend, they meet with you for an hour, but you get like just so much wisdom from an hour meeting or 2 hour or meetings, once a month. And so one lady, she's met me and she said, Hazel, and this is exactly what she said, your left brain is very strong. I mean, as a kid, I can sit and I used to do math. Like I had such a passion for math, and I think math allowed, people, my friends would laugh and say, the buildings could be crashing behind you and you're down in solving this problem because for me, problem solving is like the best thing that I can do. And she said, your left brain is strong. She goes, but nothing is you always need to have some sort of balance. So she says, exercise your right side. And suggested, go to, watch films like Toronto Film Festival, and I love that because in the Toronto Film Festival, you have the layers. And I think that's what really showed me, and that's what we bring. It's when you start to look at a movie, and especially the Toronto Film Festival, where you then have like the director, the actors, they come on afterwards and they say, "This is what I was bringing to it. This is what," and who was orchestrating it in its entirety. and they all bring a certain these layers to the films. I remembered I was watching one show when they were talking about, oh, the cinematography. He was like, yeah, no, whenever I we needed to connect with a character, we brought the shot really close to the face, right? And then the actor themselves was bringing something out in that, and so that was really fascinating. And that advice caused me to go down this path. I mean, I would go to Distillery District and I would look at art. And I remember talking to one lady and she had a lot of beeswax and she had, pilots, like these old-timey pilot notes. And she says, well, this was for her father. And then she's also an activist, but she's not boots on the ground. And so her activism for bees comes out in the form of her putting beeswax on her painting. And that layering and what everyone brings to have something then come to life that then you're interpreting just I thought was fascinating. And to this day, I mean, by no means am I any sort of expert. I have a friend, we go to the art gallery and we make up a lot of stuff, the juxtaposition of, we don't know what we're saying, but we appreciate it. And so we read a lot on, the note about the author and what they were going through in their time period, because all of that, to answer your last question around what does that bring to an organization, it brings the understanding of the layers. The organization, as I said, is a system and it's made up of so many layers that manifest in different ways. And so understanding that aspect of art and how those layers come together really helps in analyzing an organization to truly kind of lay bare the operations in order to get that clarity. So that's what has been my journey and continues to be my journey because I believe you're a forever learner.
That's so fascinating because especially the way you phrase it, a lot of people kind of see themselves in a certain lane, right? Well, this is just what I do and this is my
Mhm.
lane, right? And sometimes it can even feel uncomfortable because then you are a bit of a novice. Like I'm sure as you're starting to get there, like as soon as you went there, I'm sure you weren't like an expert on cinematography,
Oh no.
but being comfortable enough to be like, oh, okay, I get it. Okay, I'm starting to learn. And what I'm also hearing, because for to make the work that you do with organizations stick, you have to get the buy-in,
Yeah.
right? So being able to, as I'm hearing you talk about, it's so many different angles. It's the same scene, but if you're the cinematographer, if you're the director, if you're the actor, if you're
Mhm.
the set design person, you're
Mhm.
seeing that
Costume.
same scene in a completely different way.
100%.
So by having I guess, first of all, I think part of it is the humility to understand that it's not just building a great process, but
No.
understanding it.
Hmm.
And again, I love the analogy of using the frame of art and
Yeah.
film in
Hmm.
terms of using that lens. So then you're able to connect with people. When people understand that you understand, or you get it, or at least you're asking the questions because you
Right.
get that there's another aspect to it, that kind of gets people to, okay, she understands us. And it also informs the quality of your work because you have a more comprehensive
Narrative.
understanding of what they're doing. So yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's so brilliant. And I think it's something that we can all learn from in terms of
Mhm.
getting a bit outside of our comfort zone and trying to build up those other
No,
areas that might not be natural, right?
that's definitely and I always joke and tell the story that my art teacher was questioning the tree that I put in front of her. So art is by no means a skill of mine, but I can appreciate all the different art forms,
Yeah.
and appreciate the creativeness and the folks who actually come up with it, even like when you hear songs, music, like everything, dance. Yeah, really, I appreciate it. It's
Yes.
not something that I'm skilled at all.
Well, but it sounds like you're building those skills and
Yeah,
and because you appreciate it and you want to and you see the value that I'm sure it also has outside of your professional life, but definitely in your professional life as well.
yeah,
Another
yeah,
topic that always comes up every time that we talk is
yeah.
about culture.
Mm.
So whenever we talk, at some point you're going to talk about the importance of culture.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to understand firstly, like why is that something that was important for you to focus
Mm.
on with as you were building your organization?
Mhm.
And how do you see that investment in culture realizing benefits for, again, both your organization as well as for the clients that you serve?
Yeah. So, I was lucky enough, things always happen on your journey, I think, when you need it. And so when I started on this journey, I started working with a small, like a boutique consulting firm that did culture analysis. And we were able to do the analysis of some fairly substantial firms in the US and so study their results and then go and present to them, right? I had someone come up to me and say, I feel as if you've been working with this organization for 11 years. And I'm thinking, no, that was just many Saturday nights of analyzing data. So when you're looking to accomplish something, you realized that line that it's not a straight line because it's not linear, but you can see that connection between the culture and not just espouse. So I see it as different. There's an espoused culture and then there's a lived culture. And really what you want is those two things to be the same. You don't want to be saying, "Oh yeah, we have a culture of, of trust." But then when you talk to people, it's like, "Yeah, no, I cover, right? And I do this," and you realize, "Hold on a second, people aren't trusting. So this doesn't really line up with a culture of trust." So having studied that and done, a lot of work and research on it, I realized that when I was going to start this organization, it had to be anchored in culture, because I just saw how difficult organizations that already had and started to have this embedded culture that just didn't line up with what they wanted to accomplish. That's like it was like turning a huge ship. And I said I didn't want to be in that position, right? First time. I'm also a lean thinker. So I believe in that. So that's why we identified, well, what are the values? And then what is the lived culture? Because the lived culture comes from all of the things that you'll put in place, your processes, like your decisions that you make. And so you have to have a lens of this is a culture we want. This is therefore the decision that we have to make, and we have to analyze it, and this is how we are going to move forward. Because people's lived experience in the organization directly links with the service quality you deliver to your clients.
Yes, for sure. And we see that all the time.
100%. And so that had to be first and foremost in this organization because it is about creating a lived experience for staff. And it's also about having the partnership and the service quality for clients that made them feel that we're in it with them, helping them to be successful.
Right. Like partners.
Partners, exactly.
So, okay, so I can't let you not reference your mom and why it is that your organization is called Pearl Operational Design, because I think some of those pieces that you were just talking about around culture,
Yeah.
based on what I know of you and the organization, does link back to some of those values that were instilled in you by your mom. So I just wanted to ask you if you could just share a little bit about how your mom's influence has really helped you build your organization.
Sure. So yes, so Pearl is my mother's name. Unfortunately, we lost her the year before I started this organization. And as I always tell people, my niece acronized her name. So it's actually an acronym, Performance Excellence Achieving Results. There's a little and that's not included, and leadership. And that was really important. So the minute that my niece started to acronize my mom's name, and I was like, okay, yeah, this organization is going to be called Pearl Operational Design because people don't design their operations. I started to write down and look at her values. She was a nurse, so she was in healthcare. And she was also the type of nurse because she had to go out and meet. So, social determinants of health right there. She had to meet her clients where they were. They couldn't come into the clinic, so she had to go out and she met them. But she didn't just go to, for example, give them a shot and what they needed. She would observe everything about their space, the relationships. She would, sometimes argue with people, why are you not taking care of, you know, I'm like, you can't go into people's house and quarrel with them, she would see, this part, unfortunately diabetic may have lost their limbs, they're on a caster, for example, and then she'd say, okay, well, they have to go to an outhouse. Why is that? Because when it rains, it means it's going to pool and then they're going to get wet. Like, so she didn't just look at, I need to come and give you a shot. She looked at everything around them that would make them or impact their health. And I always remember that because I always remember her also coming home and packing up food because there's some client she saw that, had a problem, either with food insecurity or something like that. And so that feeling that her clients had that she was with them,
Mhm.
on the journey to better and improved health outcomes. I really wanted that to be a part of how our clients felt and even how staff, that's our value proposition to our our staff as well, myself included. And so then looking at, okay, so what are the values that brings that out, right? And so you definitely have to have the integrity because what you don't want is to say something and then your actions are different.
Mhm.
So really a lot of how we show up and the fact that we have to have trust, a lot of how we show up is that because ultimately we want our clients to feel like my mother's patients that we're there with them
Mhm.
on the journey. And then the other thing I think of which links to culture is, I've seen it. I've spoken to friends, they have worked in organizations where the culture has been so toxic that it makes them sick.
Mhm.
And I said, that is just counterintuitive because if this organization is named after a nurse, it cannot have a culture that makes people sick. It just can't.
Yes.
So yes, so that's the link.
Yes,
I'll
thank
stop
you so
there.
much for sharing that. I just thought it was really important to
Thank you.
bring those principles in. And
Mhm.
also, I love the analogy between when you were talking about your mother
Mhm.
when it wasn't about, oh, I have to give you a shot or whatever specific, I'll call it a transaction she went there to
Mhm.
do. It was also about looking around to see, what's really going on, to realize, oh, no, actually, this is a problem and this needs to be resolved before this shot is even going to be effective. And
Exactly.
similarly, I know that you talk about as well meeting your clients where they are.
Mhm.
And it's not about, oh, here is a new process design. Look, isn't it pretty? Look at what we did for you, right? And it is really about, but can this work? And do we know enough to be able to, you talked about do we know enough about your systems? So it is really about that person getting healthy, if I use the analogy
Mhm.
with your mom, and it is for your clients, that organization thriving as a result. It's not just about, well, we did our part. It's about
That's
we
it.
have to make sure that what we're doing is something that will align and
Mhm.
can produce the results that are desired. So, yes, I just think that that's so
Mhm.
brilliant. And it seems very basic, right? Because I'm saying, oh, it's
It
for the
is.
organization to be successful, but you and I both know that no, there are a lot of organizations, whether it's process design or otherwise, where it is about, oh, well, here, this is what you asked me to do. Here it is, and it's the best process map you're ever going to see.
Yeah,
But it's like, okay, really, it's where the rubber hits the road, and
it
it's
is.
about the results, and it's about making the impact that people are desiring. So, yes, thank you for
Yeah.
emphasizing that.
Yeah.
So, and then I just wanted to wrap up with a final question. And as you know, process design is not really sexy. Like when you think about companies, and especially when you talk, all these startups and stuff like that, it's about, the intellectual property, it's about this
Hmm.
idea, designing a product, it's about sales, it's about marketing, all of
Yes.
these sexy things. And as you said as well, a lot of organizations do kind of grow and then they get to a
Hmm.
point and they don't even probably even know that it is those systems that were not thought through. I
Right.
think the analogy you were using was building a house where you do think all those things through first.
Hmm.
Here's where the steps are. Here's where the kitchen is.
Hmm.
So what I wanted to ask you is, if you had
Hmm.
the ear of every business leader for about 5 minutes. What are the most important things that you would want to tell them about the importance of process design in their success?
So I'll pull that. So process is part of your operations. I'll pull that up,
Okay.
and I will say your operations are holding you back. I have not met any organization where it hasn't. So your operations are holding you back. You need to fully understand the complexity of your operations in order to drive the outcomes that you want. You need to ensure that with that clarity, you're not sub-optimizing. You need to ensure that you're not making short-term decisions, that you're actually playing the long game. And by long game, you have to understand, you have to have that clarity of your operations to fully understand what your outcomes are and what is driving your outcomes. And then you also need to ensure that with that understanding, you are measuring because every aspects of your outcome, some of them are qualitative, but they also need to be quantified. And so you need to be able to have that holistic picture in order to really ensure that you're moving forward. And without that operational clarity, it is going to be holding you back.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. It's almost like the skeleton, the frame inside the human body. So
Yeah.
yes, that is so impactful. And thank you so much for also sharing the two sides to it, like in
Yep.
terms of the pure systems piece to it,
Hmm.
an analytical piece to it, as well as the understanding and the
Yep.
empathy. I'm going to use the empathy and really curiosity of trying to well, why do you do this? And really meeting your clients where they are. I
Hmm.
also forgot to congratulate you on just passing your 10-year anniversary for
Thank you.
Pearl Operational Design. And thank you so much for taking your time to talk with me today. It's always great talking to you.
Yeah, no, it's
Always
always
learn
great.
something. So thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. As I expected, it was a great conversation. And yeah, and thank you for the work you do with your podcast and bringing all these interesting people to out out in there and allowing us to speak and learn from your folks. So thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Enjoyed that interview, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, My Lemonade Stand. You can also stream it off of your favorite podcast streaming platform. Looking forward to seeing you next time.